opened my
let's get
door and
those
stopped
chairs in
cold.
place.
My lush green patio,
What in
surrounded
the
by
world
trees,
is going
sunlight,
on
and the
here?
quiet I paid
We are
for, had been
making a
overtaken
beautiful
by a
wedding,
full wedding
darling.
crew. Strangers dragged chairs across my grass, floral arches smothered my garden, and a tuxedoed man rehearsed vows beside my koi pond. And there she was,
Those chairs in place.
Karen, dressed in a blinding, glitter-soaked turquoise suit and a hat the size of a
Get
satellite
six.
dish, commanding everyone like a deranged
To the
parade
left.
marshal. She stood on my deck, sipping a kale drink, as if she owned the entire backyard. No one saw me yet, which was good, because the real surprise was hiding under their feet. Karen finally spotted me when a gust of wind rattled the fairy lights she'd wrapped around my maple tree. She turned with that trademark overbright smile, too many teeth, too much confidence, her sequined turquoise suit flashing like a lighthouse in the green, peaceful yard she'd invaded. "Oh, you're home early," she chirped as if this were her property, and I was the unexpected guest. Without waiting for a response, she snapped her fingers at a caterer to reposition a champagne tower on my deck. That was her first move, acting before anyone else could claim authority. Her second arrived a beat later. "Don't worry," she said, patting my railing like it was a community bench. "This patio qualifies as shared use outdoor enhancement. Section 7, paragraph 12. She delivered it as a fact, not the delusion it was. I kept my face neutral, though I remembered exactly when this shift began 2 weeks ago when her sudden kindness arrived. Banana bread, on my porch, compliments about my roses, casual questions about whether I'd be out of town. I'd assumed it was medication, but no, she was laying groundwork. And now, she was executing the takeover she'd been quietly engineering. She truly believed she controlled this space, but she had no idea how badly she'd miscalculated. The first crack in her performance showed up the next morning. I stepped out with my coffee and almost tripped over a length of measuring tape stretched across the patio boards. A white chalk line sliced my cedar deck in half, running from the back door straight toward the koi pond. On the railing, taped right where my hand usually rested, was a folded note in looping, aggressive cursive "Thank you for sharing your extended outdoor enhancement with the community. HOA Events Committee." There was no events committee. There was only Karen in a lime green blazer and floral leggings standing 2 yards over, pretending she wasn't watching my reaction. I didn't give her one. I peeled the note off, set the tape aside, and went inside to my office. From my monitor, I rewound the patio camera feed. At 6:42 a.m., there she was in a neon windbreaker, pacing the deck with the tape measure drawing that chalk line like she was dividing up a stage. She didn't even hesitate. That was the part that caught me. No uncertainty, no pause. Just a woman convinced the world rearranged itself around her clipboard. By afternoon, the event had evolved. A man in a blazer and headset knocked on my door, sweating through his collar. Behind him, the trees swayed gently my yard, looking like a magazine, spread thick green grass shade dappled across the deck, koi flashing gold in the pond. "Hi, sorry," he said. "I'm here to confirm the revised seating chart for Saturday." As the property owner reviewed it, I leaned against the frame. "Which property owner?" He checked his clipboard. "Mrs. Karen. She said this deck is part of the HOA's shared entertainment zone and that you'd be out of town." I nodded slowly like I was learning the weather forecast. "I won't be out of town." His smile faltered. "Oh, well," she said. "Yeah," I cut in gently. "She says a lot of things." I closed the door. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up my plat map, and traced the bold black line that wrapped neatly around my house, my trees, my pond, my deck. Every inch of it lived 12 feet inside my lot. No gray area, no shared. On paper, she had nothing. In her head, she owned everything she could point at. The rehearsal hit 2 days before the wedding. I woke to the sound of tires on gravel and stepped out to find my private leafy haven being choreographed like a music video. Teens in black t-shirts hauled folding chairs across my lawn, leaving faint trails in the grass. A floral archway dripping with white roses was wedged onto the center of my deck, blocking the sliding door like I'd been sealed inside my own house. Fairy lights wrapped around the trunks of my maple's cords, zigzagging through bushes I'd spent years nursing into shape. Every time the breeze rolled through, the trees rustled green and soft, and those lights flickered like the whole scene was pretending to be a fairy tale. Then came the sign. By the front sidewalk just beyond my mailbox, Karen planted a freestanding board in the ground. Curly gold letters on a blush background, "Private wedding in progress, please respect the celebration." I watched from the porch as she adjusted it 3 times to get the angle right. Today's costume was a sunflower yellow dress with ruffled sleeves and heels that sank into the turf every other step. When I walked down to move the barricade she'd placed across my driveway, pink streamers, fake ivy, the whole Pinterest nightmare, she flapped her hand at me. "Could you not?" she said. "It ruins the aesthetic when cars keep moving through." "You do realize this is my driveway, right?" I answered. She laughed like I'd told a joke at her dinner table. "Oh, John, don't be that guy. It's one afternoon. You agreed to be cooperative." I looked at the laminated schedule in her hand. At the bottom in neat print, it read, "Homeowner John has agreed to stay inside or vacate during key events. No interference." "I never said that," I told her. She shrugged. "Verbal consent is enough for harmony. You care about harmony, don't you?" The thing she never understood was how quiet my anger stayed. It didn't flare. It settled. It planned. By the next day, the damage began. A catering truck reversed straight across the edge of my yard tires, carving deep scars into the soft green. The driver killed the engine, jumped out, and started unloading gleaming trays and portable fridges directly onto my grass. A man with an extension cord headed for my side gate. I met him halfway. "Need something?" I asked. He held up the cord, just grabbing power from the garage outlet. "Karen said her brother doesn't mind." I stared at him. "Her brother," he blinked, replaying his own words in his head, then shook it off. "That's what she said." "Is this not—" "This is my house," I said. "Unplug the cord. Now." He did. To his credit, he apologized. The ruts in the lawn didn't. Around noon, a truck much smaller and infinitely more destructive arrived. A man in overalls, leading a white goat with a flower crown snugged between its ears. The animal's hooves clicked on the stone path as he tied the rope to my porch post. "The bride wants rustic charm," he said, patting its neck. "He'll just hang out for pictures." Within minutes, the goat found my irrigation hose, the one wired to a timer, the one I'd wrestled into place over 2 straight weekends. It started chewing with ecstatic focus. From across the yard, Karen clapped her hands. Today's look emerald green jumpsuit bangles clinking as she walked. "Oh, isn't he adorable?" she sang. "Don't worry, we'll keep him away from your little plants." My little plants were heirloom roses, grafted from my grandmother's old bushes, and a line of lavender that softened the edge of the deck purple, tucked against rich green. The goat ate like he was being timed. I didn't shout. I snapped a photo. Then I walked to the shed and checked the locking pin on the hydraulic reservoir. Later that afternoon, 2 older men in matching navy windbreakers appeared at my door, clipboards in hand. HOA security, according to their badges. "John," the taller one said, "just a friendly reminder that today's event is a recognized community celebration. We're asking residents not to run loud tools or enter the patio during ceremony hours. It's about privacy for the guests." "Privacy?" I repeated. He nodded. The other added, "Think of it as civic participation. Use your side door if you need to leave." My yard swayed gently behind them, branches moving light, filtering through the leaves, the sound of water trickling in the pond. My house, my deck, my utility lines. "You're telling the owner of the green space you're standing in that he can't step onto his own patio," I said. "Karen assured us she had the usage rights cleared," the taller one replied, eyes darting away. "What did she clear them with?" I asked. "A napkin." They handed me a printed itinerary and retreated faster than they'd arrived. Around 3, a knock came that I didn't expect. Uniform, clipboard, different energy. "Afternoon, sir," the fire marshal said. "We've had a report of unpermitted structures and possible overload on residential circuits. Mind if I take a look?" I smiled and stepped aside. "You're going to want to see the backyard." We walked past the side of the house under the canopy of trees that kept the yard cool and soft, even in the afternoon heat. He stopped twice before he even hit the deck, once at the tangle of extension cords coiled around my sprinkler box, once at the propane burners sitting inches from chiffon drapes. "Who's coordinating this?" he asked. "That would be her," I said. Karen strode over now in a coral blazer thrown over the green jumpsuit hat dotted with fake cherries. She launched into charm mode immediately. "Officer, we're just celebrating love and community permits," he cut in. She faltered, then gestured toward a table. "We have guidelines. It's a small gathering." He wasn't impressed. He photographed the cords, the crowding, the burner placement. In the end, he handed her a written warning and said, "If I get another call, I shut this down." She watched him leave, then spun on me, eyes blazing under the brim. "You called him?" "No," I said genuinely. "Someone else is apparently better at dialing than I am." "Comforting, isn't it?" Her jaw clenched. The deck under her heels creaked faintly, a sound only I noticed. By the morning of the wedding, there was no turning back. The sun filtered through the maple leaves, throwing shifting patterns of light across the grass. The koi traced lazy loops in the pond, oblivious to the circus being built above them. SUVs lined the street. Guests spilled out in sequins and suits walking through my green open yard, like it was a rented venue. "Oh, the decorator really went all out," one woman said, running a hand over my flower bed. My neighbor Alan leaned over the fence, coffee mug in hand, watching a shuttle bus unload people at the curb. "You renting the patio now?" he asked. "Apparently," I said. "They forgot the check." He snorted, then lowered his voice. "You sure you don't want me to call someone?" "Not yet," I replied. "We're almost at the good part." Inside, the drone waited on the entry table, batteries charged. The control app was open on my tablet recording set to feed directly to a drive. The hydraulic override sat in my pocket, small enough to disappear in a closed fist. One last time, I walked onto the deck, under the pretense of grabbing a forgotten coaster. The boards felt solid under my feet, the hidden metal plates snug against the joists. The floral arch rose over my head, framing the green canopy beyond. Karen swept past me in a cream pantsuit, an enormous feathered hat, adjusting centerpieces, checking angles, scolding a groomsman for standing in the wrong spot. "Try not to linger," she murmured without looking at me. "You're crowding the aisle." I slipped my hand into my pocket, thumb brushing the remote. "You have no idea," I said softly. Then I stepped back into the cool of my house, closed the door, and watched the green world outside fill with people who thought they were standing on safe, steady ground. By 3 o'clock, the yard looked like a magazine spread, pretending it wasn't trespassing. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, scattering gold across the grass. The koi pond shimmered beyond the deck, calm and glassy, an innocent stage waiting beneath the chaos above it. Guests settled into their seats, pastel dresses bright against the deep green backdrop. Violins tuned. The DJ tested the speakers. The whole scene floated in a bubble of borrowed serenity. Then, the music began. I watched from inside, half-shadowed behind the blinds. The bride stepped onto the deck, bouquet, trembling in her hands, lace skirt brushing the boards I'd sanded and sealed myself. The guests rose in unison, murmurs quieted. The wedding planner dabbed sweat from his brow. For a moment it actually looked beautiful, if you ignored the fact that every inch of it was staged on stolen ground. Karen strutted to the front like a pageant queen, sequins blazing in the afternoon sun. Her hat feathers, rhinestones, entirely unnecessary, bobbed with each triumphant step. She lifted the microphone, smiled at the crowd, and delivered her speech in the same tone she used to scold people about recycling bins. "We gather today," she proclaimed, "on this shared community patio that brings us all together in harmony. Harmony. On my deck, in my yard, under my trees." A high-pitched feedback screech burst from the speakers, cutting her sentence in half. Guests flinched. One man yelped and dropped his champagne. The DJ threw his hands up, crawling under the table to rescue the tangled mess of cords. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically, waving at him to hurry up. "Just fix it," she hissed, forgetting the mic was still live. That's when the wind arrived, one sudden gust sweeping down through the branches. Karen's oversized hat lifted like a sail and launched off her head, gliding over the railing in perfect slow motion before splashing into the koi pond. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen shrieked like someone had pushed her child into traffic. For one beautiful second, everyone froze. That was my moment. I pressed the remote. The hydraulic system engaged with a whisper-soft hum, barely audible beneath the music. The deck shifted by a single degree, just enough to send a champagne bottle rolling. A few guests straightened in their seats, confused. Then the tilt continued. Another bottle rolled, then a stack of plates. A decorative lantern slid off a table and shattered against the lower step. Someone screamed, "The floor is moving." Panic flickered across faces. The bride clutched her bouquet tighter. The groom lunged forward to steady her. Chairs scraped, dresses swished, the floral arch creaked violently, and then the cake went airborne. 3 tiers of fondant and delicate piping lifted from the center table, gliding like a doomed satellite before crashing into the koi pond with a splash so dramatic it drenched the nearest row of guests. Water erupted. People shrieked. A groomsman lost his footing and slid across the deck like he'd stepped onto ice. The goat, apparently done with decorum, broke free of its rope and trotted triumphantly across the tilting boards. Karen spun toward the house, dripping and enraged. "John, what did you do?" she screamed, slipping as she tried to march uphill on the shifting deck. I opened the back door slowly, expression calm. "Looks like the deck's overload safety engaged," I said. "Too many people. Or decorations. Hard to say." "This is sabotage," she spat. "You said it was community property," I replied, shrugging. "Maybe it disagrees." Before she could answer, the HOA board arrived, 3 members in polos and khakis, stopping dead at the sight of soaked guests, scrambling the goat, chewing a fallen bouquet, and Karen flailing on the angled boards. What in the world happened here? The oldest member demanded. Karen jabbed a shaking finger at me. He rigged it. He destroyed our event. The board exchanged looks. Then one said, Karen, did you use HOA funds for this? Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. It was a communal investment for engagement, Karen. Another board member cut in, pulling a folder from her bag. You submitted an amendment claiming this deck was common property. You forged signatures. And you diverted nearly $4,000 from our maintenance account. Gasps rose from the crowd. Karen stammered, only this was for the neighborhood. The board didn't let her finish. We're calling an emergency vote, the lead member said, effective immediately. Right there, on a tilted deck, in a dripping forest of ruined wedding decor, the HOA voted her out unanimously. Karen stumbled backward in shock, landing on a folding chair that slid off the deck and dumped her into the wet grass below. The goat bleated approvingly, and for the first time since this circus began, the yard felt quiet again. The moment Karen hit the grass, the entire wedding seemed to exhale at once. Guests scrambled off the tilted deck, shoes slipping in muddy patches where pond water had splashed. Dresses clung damply to legs. Suits were streaked with frosting and lawn. The goat wandered triumphantly through the center of the chaos, sniffing fallen roses as if inspecting its kingdom. I stayed where I was, just inside the doorway, watching as the scene unraveled beneath the tall green canopy of my backyard. Sunlight flickered through the leaves, dappling the ruined decorations, the scattered chairs, the wilted flowers. Even with the chaos, the yard felt peaceful again, almost relieved to reclaim its natural state. The HOA board didn't move at first. They stood on the lawn, stunned, taking in the drenched wedding party, the soaked arch listing sideways and the cake dissolving into glittering shards on the pond's surface. Finally, one member cleared her throat and said, Everyone, please step back. We need to assess what happened here. People shifted away, grumbling. Several pointed toward Karen, who was struggling to stand her cream suit now streaked brown and green. Others shot me apologetic glances. A few even murmured, sorry about your yard as they passed. The crowd wanted to leave, but curiosity pinned them in place. The board approached the deck, careful on the tilted boards. John, the lead member, said we need to understand what occurred. I nodded and stepped outside, keeping my tone calm. Your president staged a full-scale wedding on private property she doesn't own, without permission, using power lines, structures, and equipment that violated multiple fire codes. The deck tilted because the overload safety engaged. Simple as that. Several guests blinked. Someone whispered, it's his patio. I reached into my pocket and handed the board my phone. On the screen, the plat map, the permits, the date-stamped construction photos. As the board scrolled, I tapped a button and mirrored the feed to the living room TV through the open doorway clear as day. Security footage showing Karen giving orders, directing crews, attaching lights to my trees, planting chalk lines on my deck at dawn. Whispers rippled across the lawn. The goat bleated as if offering commentary. The board exchanged heavy looks. Karen, one said, voice trembling with restrained frustration, you told us this patio was community space. You submitted an amendment packet claiming unanimous approval. Karen wiped mud from her sleeve. It should be community space. It's so big he doesn't even use it right. I was improving the neighborhood spirit by forging signatures, another board member asked. Gasps spread. Karen faltered. They would have signed if they'd understood the vision. That is not how this works, the board president said flatly. We've already removed you from office. Now we must address the consequences. He turned to me. John, we acknowledge your property was damaged. The board will arrange full restitution immediately. And thank you for not escalating this earlier. I nodded once. No need for a speech. The footage on the TV did the speaking for me. Neighbors drifted in closer, now gathering near the deck, helping right fallen chairs, pulling soggy floral garlands out of the pond. The trees swayed gently above us, scattering speckles of sunlight across everything, like nature itself, trying to reset the scene. Each breath of wind carried the fresh, earthy scent of the garden beneath all the spilled champagne and frosting. Someone tugged at my sleeve. Alan. Need a hand fixing the lawn later, he asked. Yeah, I said. I think I will. Others joined him, quiet apologies, offers to pay for flowers, comments about finally being rid of Karen's creative interpretations of the bylaws. For the first time in a long time, the HOA crowd actually looked unified, not in fear of Karen, but relieved she no longer ruled them. Board members huddled near the koi pond, speaking in low voices about audits, refunded accounts, and formal complaints they'd file before the day ended. No time jumps, no waiting. They were still in my yard, still soaked from pond spray, already planning accountability. I stepped onto the deck with them, the board steady now that the mechanism had reset. I knelt briefly, brushed a smear of frosting off the wood, and listened to the soft hum of the hydraulic system resting beneath. Everything still worked. Everything was intact. As the crowd thinned, guests leaving in damp clusters, vendors awkwardly packing ruined equipment, the yard settled into a quiet, warm stillness. The late afternoon sun slanted across the grass, turning the water in the koi pond gold. A neighbor coaxed the goat toward a leash, murmuring gently, "I think he likes me," she laughed. "Take him," I said. "He deserves a better wedding season." She grinned and led the goat through the gate. The board gathered their papers, thanked me again, and walked down the lawn, shoes squelching. Even with everything broken, scattered, or muddy, the green canopy overhead made the moment strangely peaceful, like the yard was exhaling after a long, absurd storm. I stayed on the deck alone for a final moment. The air smelled of damp wood, crushed roses, and something faintly sweet from the ruined cake drifting on the pond. I slipped the remote from my pocket and ran my thumb over the button once, then tucked it away. Above the trees, the drone hovered for a moment longer, capturing the last frame of the day, a quiet yard, sunlight glowing through the leaves, and one man standing calmly on a patio that answered back when pushed. And as the breeze rustled the branches overhead, I couldn't help thinking all Karen ever had to do was ask,